Hi, welcome to the Emerald Podcast. My name is Dan.
My name is Hanad.
And today we are joined by Dr. Karan Rajan. Karan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Karan, today it's never been easier to get access to high-quality healthcare information at your fingertips on TikTok, on Instagram, from an educator such as yourself. Simultaneously, it's never been easier for your feed also to be cluttered with misinformation, not least from the US Health Secretary, amongst other people. How do you, as a medical educator, stamp your authority, draw your line to sort of maybe combat what I see as sort of rife misinformation on social media, when it's also such a good platform for spreading very positive healthcare information?
Yeah, I think we know that misinformation is just abundant everywhere. You can't avoid it, and there's also a lot of good stuff as well. And I would say overall, the amount of good stuff probably outweighs the bad stuff that's out there. The problem is the bad stuff is a lot sexier and how it's packaged, and the people promoting misinformation are just very good communicators. And that's the first thing that a lot of scientists and educators can maybe take heart from. Like, wow, let's look at these guys who are spreading misinformation and how they're packaging their information. And I think ultimately, fear is one of the most powerful behavioral conditioning tools that we have in human psychology, and a lot of those guys are polarizing, hyperbolic, fear-based information, which really tugs people. I don't think that's always helpful in the long run in terms of improving health outcomes, but nuance is not sexy. But I think there should be a shift towards not just challenging that misinformation, because then you're giving opportunity, you're opening the door for dialogue, right? Yeah. And I think that's something I've moved away from. I don't debunk things anymore. I take things and put my spin on them and keep it positive. And I've found far more benefit from people in that. Like actually convincing ardent carnivores that maybe fibre is a good idea by doing that slight shift.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. To our listeners today, do you have maybe a toolkit as to sort of how to arm yourself, how to prepare yourself and think, all right, this might be disinformation? You mentioned a couple there. Fear, sort of the lack of nuance, potentially tools used by those that spread misinformation. Are there any others sort of things to look out for to identify misinformation?
Yeah, as I've come to realize more and more, health is very complex. It's filled with nuance, and it's not binary. So people who are using binary terms and absolutes and definitive statements are typically the ones where you should have a higher degree of suspicion, because scientists use words like possibly, could, maybes, potentially, mights. There's always some degree of nuance, hesitance, the acceptance that you might have to change your opinion. But if someone says, you must, don't ever, stuff like that, it's kind of these buzzwords where it is putting things into buckets, and it never comports with actual health.
Chia seeds are a must, and if you're not having them...
Yeah, I mean, like, chia seeds are great, but also they can, in some populations, if you've got IBS, can be tricky. So actually, it's not a, you must eat this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And is that misinformation some of the kind of motivation that got you to content create, to kind of set the record straight?
Yeah, I think, when early on in my medical career, I found a lot of my patients were taking advice from old school misinformation. So obviously in the world of general surgery, I saw a lot of patients with bowel problems. One of the bowel issues I would see pretty frequently, because it's so rife, is diverticulosis and diverticular disease in general. There's this constant narrative, this dogmatic thinking that if you've got diverticulitis or diverticular disease, you've got these basically herniations on the bowel, little tiny sac-like projections from the bowel. If you eat seeds, they can get stuck in those little sacs and worsen the condition. That is total bunk. It's complete nonsense, because seeds are fibre. And if you've got diverticular disease, you probably should be consuming a higher fibre diet longer term in your life, and just not in a flare-up. And so when I was faced with patients telling me, I read or someone said this, I knew the source where that came from. And so definitely getting involved in that was a huge part of like changing the narrative about health.
To your point exactly about how to learn from those spreading misinformation, that imagery of seeds getting stuck in diverticular pouches, you can see how that sticks in the layperson's brain. It's very neatly explained, even though it's total nonsense. And from going through your TikTok, from consuming your content, I see how you've adapted some of those lessons into, okay, that's nonsense, but you can't just, as you say, debunk that and leave people with nothing. You've got to place another simple analogy, which is actually the truth.
Analogies and visual representations always work well because people need something to hang their coat on. And the most dangerous kind of misinformation is not the one that's blatantly wrong, right? It is stuff that has a molecule of truth where you can see the origin of it, and then it's been mutated into something wrong. And so this diverticular thing has a molecule of truth as well, because if someone has a flare-up of the bowel condition, diverticulitis, they actually should not be on a high-fiber diet then. As a doctor, when I've treated people with diverticulitis and active inflammation, they have to go on a low-residue or low-fiber diet during that inflammation period. Same as if someone's got a flare-up of their inflammatory bowel disease. And then eventually, longer term, they should increase their fiber. So there is like some overlapping truth there, which has been mutated. And that's the worst kind, because it's like, how do I pass out the truth from the bullshit? And yeah, listen, ultimately, people want something to take away, practical advice. Debunking it is one half of the equation, but what's kind of your alternative take on that? And I think that's more important. Give someone the replacement, the cure for the nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, today you're a very high-profile medical educator, 5 million followers on TikTok, 2 million on Instagram. I imagine that in med school, that wasn't the plan immediately. Can you take us through maybe how you started posting content through to growing your following to where it is today?
Yeah, I mean, none of it was obviously planned. However, 2010, when I was third or fourth year of med school, I started a YouTube channel. So I started YouTube back in the days of the bad old days of YouTube when, it was actually a weird thing to be making videos and putting them online. And now it's weird if you don't make videos, right? Yeah. So, times have changed. And that was mainly, the YouTube channel was called the OSCE Station. In the UK and other areas around the world, med students have OSCE examinations, objective structured clinical examinations. And I didn't really see many channels or educational tools where someone could watch a video to explain how to do a certain skill, how to do an abdominal examination, how to do suturing. So me and two buddies in Imperial, we did that, and we spent so many hours filming, recruiting friends to be simulated patients. Can you allow me to listen to your chest while you're bare-bodied?
It's going on the internet.
God, there was a admin assistant in Imperial College, a girl called Aisha, who I was friends with, and I asked her if she wouldn't mind being the simulated patients for a bimanual vaginal examination, but obviously didn't examine her, but she was the patient, and then we cut to a pelvic model, and the comments of that YouTube video was bait and switch, whatever, crazy comments, right? Insane, Reddit level comments. But anyway, that was the origin story. Educational videos kind of targeted towards healthcare professionals, and I immediately saw the benefit because people from Ghana, Sweden, India, America, Canada, all watching, students and junior healthcare professionals, physios, nurses, gaining some value from these videos because they were neatly structured and really well edited, actually. But it took a lot of time, waste of time and money, recording equipment, hiring out stuff, and for probably about 2010 to 2019, 2020, 10 years of social media exile, famine, just putting out there for the love of creating content and educating. Maybe had built up 20,000 followers over those 10 years of really cult-like following who love this stuff. I was in ASMR playlists on YouTube, it was deep. So that's the law. And then obviously I pivoted towards short form content, but more focused towards public health education, epidemiological stuff.
You're now a practicing doctor putting this stuff out.
Putting this stuff out, exactly, yeah. I'm using more of my knowledge, but now pivoting away from targeting healthcare professionals who don't need the information as much as the lay public. And I kind of found my niche where actually that was more useful and it got a lot more traction, and then here we are.
Would you say there was a single moment where you went viral, or was it kind of a gradual thing?
Yeah, I mean, you have these moments where you get videos which get more attention, but I never was an overnight success. It was always gradual, kind of a nice steep gradual curve, never overnight and then boom. which is fine. Like, I always believe in steady growth and organic growth, but there were moments like during the COVID times when, I don't know, it was always relatable stuff. Like, after a night shift, I would go shopping with my dad. And I saw people wearing rubber gloves and using rubber gloves on their trolleys and in their checkout. And I was thinking, that is actually insane, because rubber gloves is not going to protect you against this. You're just transmitting the germs to every single place. I made a video about that at the end of a night shift, drawing it on a glove, like explaining how you can accumulate germs on a rubber glove. And that's not a panacea to prevent yourself against this. It's washing hands. And that went viral, picked up by Lad Bible and all these sites. It was even in Turkey and Singapore and the US. That was a moment. Another moment was I just did like 3 weird medical facts. I was in Scrubs talking about like weird medical facts, like, you know, your stomach acid is powerful enough to dissolve razor blades over time, and you've got more bacterial cells than human cells. That obviously had a moment as well. So, you know, just interesting stuff.
Was there a moment as your following grew to the millions where you said, well, look, I've got this platform, I've got this audience, I have a greater responsibility than ever to get my facts right, to not perpetuate any misinformation? Or was it the case that because this was always for a medical audience, there was always a very high standard and you didn't have that moment?
Yeah, for me, it's always, if I put out something, I've got to pretend that it's a very vulnerable population watching. Is it my parents watching? Am I giving advice to my parents? So that barrier is always high, the bar is high, and it's always fact check everything. Even if it's a topic that I'm very comfortable talking about, general surgery, gut stuff, microbiome stuff, I always want to make sure that there is accurate, contemporaneous, up-to-date information. So that goes everywhere. And, you know, I covered stuff which is technically outside my wheelhouse, whether I'm talking about sleep or brain health. Again, I always position this in my mind as I am not preaching to a room full of neurologists about sleep or a room full of cardiologists about heart health. It is the lay public. And the skills I've got is curiosity, enthusiasm, and the ability to look and appraise research and then formulate that and distill that in a simple way to an audience, right? And so that's always the kind of North Star for me. And yeah, like, you know, I don't want to put a target on my back, but like, I've not been debunked by anyone, because I always make sure I put out simple, not controversial, basic information. I'm not trying to blow someone's mind all the single time. I'm not looking for this like golden bit of viral information. I'm just looking at simple stuff which people can do that I've done, that I've learned about.
Yeah, I think one of the things that sticks out is you started when it wasn't cool to upload on YouTube. It wasn't cool to have an Instagram and talk about medicine. You must have faced some challenges starting that process and starting that journey.
Yeah, I mean, the challenges came from inside the house as well. Mum and dad, like, because, you know, this is like peak medical school, about to go into finals, about to become a junior doctor eventually as well. So it's a lot of time sunk into making videos. And, you know, for anyone who's never made content before, just looking at behind the scenes, when you're doing this yourself, you're the editor, you're the script writer, you are the actor, you're the producer, you are doing everything. You're the cameraman, you're doing lighting. And aside from all of that, there's also the expenses of potentially room hiring, video equipment, hiring, like buying software to edit to a high standard. All of that is time which the average person has to maybe sink in maybe 20, 30 hours a week, right? Some of my YouTube videos, to put out those pieces of content, would take upwards of 20 hours to edit for a 10, 12-minute video. And when I'm doing medical finals and about to become a junior doctor, that is time that is very expensive to leave behind. So my dad would actually saying, like, is this worth it? Like, you're spending a lot of time, you're not making any money. I remember, I think I made my first bit of money from YouTube, I think it was in 2013. So, you know, several years now after posting, it was like £70. And I was like, but I'd always sunk in several £100, like, you know, lost. So, and it was the hours, what's the time on that? So, you know, like, there were a lot of challenges personally in my family, doubters, and, you know, there's doubt on myself as well. Like, should I really do this? And the 2 other people I started this journey with, give them a shout out, both doctors. I think one of them's not anymore, but Ruski and Khalil, you know, they lost interest as well, just because they were busy, their own lives, family, getting married, doing other things, and then they were like, you know, we're you know, kind of done here, you know, but wish you the best.
Absolutely.
And
You've been doing this for many years now. We at Emerald Preventive Health have been putting out content for about a year now. So I know firsthand how easy it isn't, how time consuming it is. I thought it would be a simple case of speaking truth to a camera, posting that, people will love it. The slightest thing, 2 seconds of silence, potentially you've lost someone's attention, you've got no hook, or it's badly edited. And me and my 3 likes later are struggling to get that stuff off the ground. We've gone a bit better. But what was your learning journey like, and how does your content creation process look like now?
Yeah, there's like a birth and rebirth cycle that you have as a content creator, where at first you are obsessed. Well, the first thing is like you just got to overcome the barrier of maybe embarrassment or awkwardness and just train the muscles, appear in front of camera and speak and become comfortable with public speaking. That's like the number one barrier. So that's pure volume. You've got to put yourself out there outside the comfort zone, which is a new thing for professionals. We're doctors. It's a thing that we're not used to. Used to speaking to patients, and we're great communicators, but not in front of a camera when you don't have an audience necessarily, or a virtual audience. Then it's, once you get some traction, you start worrying about the numbers. You're almost like a gladiator and you want to please the crowd, right? They're baying for blood and the views. And so how do you keep going viral? That's like the kind of self-anointed pressure, which is actually quite toxic, because then it's more about appeasing someone than doing something which is your purpose and your intent, and maybe that's taking away and diluting some of the value you're trying to provide. Because now you're trying to seek attention, not provide value. Then there's like another blip in the curve where you actually stagnate potentially. You maybe run out of ideas, or you're burning out because you're trying to please someone else that's not yourself. There's a stagnation, you get worried and you want to get more views, or you become less relevant. You've got to evolve. You've got to ideate, you've got to evolve, you've got to see what's trending, because people won't always like what you used to do. People want new things. We're in the age of economy, the attention economy, where people want to move on to the next fast, shiny new thing. Then the kind of like final stage where you just have this like ego death, this kind of, similar to like a psychedelic experience. You have the ego death, and actually you just want to do what energized you in the first place, was that purpose and just providing value, and you stop caring. You don't care about the analytics, you don't care about the numbers, you start having fun again. And then you just post stuff, and then you usually find that when you're more relaxed and you're just doing it for the love of the game again, the attention, views, whatever, all in, and it's sustainable for you as well. So there's like different phases. All creators may have come through all these different life cycles.
I just wanted to actually hit the note on purpose. You're about to become a dad soon. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How's your perspective on life and time changed as a result of that?
Being a dad is one thing I realized, this is coming from someone who's removed cancers, stitched bits of bowel back together, seen life and death in the hospital as a surgeon, as a doctor. And you always have control, a degree of control over things in the medical setting. You've got guidelines, you've got specific treatments and flows and pathways, and you're in control to some degree in a lot of situations, even when it doesn't seem so. But being a dad, there's a little control that's relinquished. And that is where kind of doubt, anxiety, and stress creeps in. Like everything has gone fine so far in the pregnancy. All the scans, midwife appointments, but there's still this nervousness because like I'm just like a glorified bystander here, really. I just provide snacks and support and stuff like that. I can't really do much. And so my perspective has changed in the sense that I just want everything to go right. I want to be the best person I can be, because, when I'm a like actual dad in the next few months, as the child grows up, they're going to absorb things from me, learn not by what I say, but what I'm doing, the love I can give my family, my wife, the child. So, it's kind of like a step back and reappraising myself, realizing I need to grow up. And, I think there's a lot of growing up still to do, learning on the job, as I knew when I started as a doctor. I learned everything I know on the job. Medical school was just like, forget all that, learn on the job. It'll be a next stage here now for being a dad.
But you really started a lot of those efforts before you even got pregnant. well, not you, but your wife.
Yeah.
With epigenetics and weight loss and muscle building, etc. Can you talk us through that? Because I think that would be quite relevant to some of our users.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point because, when I was in medical school, I was always like interested in going to the gym, keeping fit. Like, I'd like skip lectures and I'd just go to the gym and with my mates and, would be training and try to outbench each other or whatever. When I became like a doctor, surgeon, so many stresses in my life, then the social media, which is like a job of its own, kind of push a lot of those self-care aspects to the back seat, to the back burner. And I found myself gaining weight, stressed, bloated, kind of brain fog, and just not my usual self. But the amount of stuff I'd learnt about kind of pregnancy and conception, I think a lot of people aren't aware that, it's not just a woman's responsibility. It's the egg and the sperm. So what can you do in that 50% contribution you provide to, bringing forth a life? You have to optimize yourself. And we have a ton of data suggesting that the father's mental health, physical health, cholesterol levels, weight, all of these other lifestyle factors, diet, contributes to the long-term trajectory of a child's health, not just microbiome health, but immune health, metabolic health, and also to the pregnancy health as well. A father's sperm at increased DNA fragmentation, oxidative stress, and damage to the sperm can increase the rates of placenta previa, preterm birth, gestational diabetes, significant early morning pregnancy like nausea. So there's a ton of stuff that you can do and contribute to the ill health of the pregnancy and the child. Yeah. So that worried me. It's like, okay, there's a lot of stuff that I can do before doing this. So before rushing to just get pregnant, I need to work on myself. I need to reverse some of this, get back into stuff I was doing, like lifting weights, watching my diet, reversing, any things I can do within my control. And so, you're contributing to your life. So it's only fair that I also do this on my part. So that's a huge part of the learning for me as well.
I suppose that kind of ties into the kind of person that you want to be to raise that child, which is the initial point that you made as well. All those self-improvements kind of tie in.
Yeah, I think we can also get into this toxic space where it's like optimizing things so much where it becomes overwhelming to yourself. At the end of the day, listen, when I was growing up, my mom and dad didn't know about the microbiome and all these sort of things. And, for the vast majority of things in my life, it's turned out pretty okay for me and most people kind of in the world, in my friends group or whatever. We're all fine. And our parents didn't focus on optimizing their sperm, their microbiome and sleep and everything. We didn't wear wearables. So I think it'll be fine. As long as you care enough, it'll be fine, right? Which most parents do. But I think, we do know things now. We should take that knowledge that we do know, the evolving science, and do as much as we can within reason without making it disordered. Don't focus so much on sleep or diet that's actually ruining your relationship with health, with nutrition. I don't want to stress out my wife like, hey, you gotta eat 10 more grams of fibre before you go to bed. It's a stressful
wake
time.
Up.
It's coming. We better get some chia seeds in you. So I think there are some things that we can definitely do to optimize things. And I use that word loosely because it's overused these days. But also stress is like a big contributor to all these things. So my wife is already doing a lot of things. She's stressed enough that she wants a healthy kid. So she's doing all of that. I don't need to add to that burden. But there are some things that we can both do. Like, for example, we're both doctors. She's a gastroenterologist. We spent a lot of time researching the best prenatal vitamins and other supplements that she should take. Right, so there's little things that you can really lean into to make sure that you're doing the right things, doing the right scans. Okay, get enough protein, get enough fiber, some basic buckets of health.
Yeah,
you've got very mainstream supplements like folate, which are known to improve outcomes, but then you've got other things like choline, which are supposed to make your baby smarter. Do you have like a supplements calendar on your kitchen wall that tells yourself or your wife what to take?
Yeah, it's a minefield out there. And I say this, both me and my wife, as we're doctors, we still found it a minefield to navigate because there are so many new companies and supplements telling you need this. And again, they go back to fear-mongering. You need this or you need this dose of this. And also, as I found in the NHS, in the early midwife appointments, there's also not a lot of knowledge there necessarily in the UK about evolving research. So there's no mention from any midwife appointments that you need supplemental choline. But actually, if you look at research over the last few years, there is a suggestion that the average pregnant woman in the UK, in the US, is not meeting maybe minimal choline targets. So there are certain dietary things you can do to increase your choline intake, obviously like, eggs and things like that. But also, if you need to, supplement them. My wife doesn't eat eggs, so she needs more choline. We know choline is crucial for fetal brain development. There's preliminary research trials showing that it is beneficial. So we found a prenatal supplement that has choline, and we're also supplementing with a specific choline supplement as well. The risk-benefit ratio is on the side of benefit rather than risk. So it's a decision we made. It's a very personal journey for every couple, what you need, what you don't need. So it's worth putting in that extra effort to do the research.
Absolutely. It's something super interesting you've touched upon there, which is where mainstream medicine is either behind the curve or doesn't plant a flag, it leaves a ripe sowing ground for other actors to come in and go, choline, we'll take that one. How do you think mainstream healthcare can do a better job of maybe demarcating its borders a bit more clearly so that some of these actors with less good evidence have less room to sort of plant their flag?
Yeah, I just don't think that mainstream medicine has the time, or has the resources, either time-wise or financially, or just in terms of bodies, to cater for this model, where it's like, we're going to help you in every step of your pregnancy journey with regards to these supplements and reviewing what you're taking and optimizing things. Because mainstream medicine around the world is not cut out for optimizing baseline health to the next level. It's optimizing poor health and bringing it up to normal, right? Which is the goal of traditional healthcare. So I just don't think there's a way in which that's going to happen. And I think it's often the burden is relinquished to the average person to do the research and maybe then take specific questions to the doctor and be like, listen, I'm on all of these other medications for cholesterol, blah, 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 blah. Can I also take this supplement? Is there any danger? And I think it's like going to the doctor or any healthcare practitioner with specific questions. And I think that's fair. There is time for that. But if it's like, hey, can you review my supplement calendar with all these things? You're not going to get the best bang for your buck because they may not be trained in that sort of extra holistic care and looking at supplements, and they don't have the time.
And it's that sort of interaction which gives customers, consumers a bad experience, and then they say, oh, my doctor doesn't have any time for me, but they've arrived at that consultation with a long list. The doctor's got 10 minutes. Instead of perhaps asking, just as you suggested, is there any harm to adding this in? I've read good evidence, and doing some of the legwork for the doctor. But to do that, they need good medical content to come their way to do some of the legwork for them. Yeah,
so ultimately, in this longevity space we're in, and again, big buzzword, longevity, health span, all these sort of things, the number one thing, the number one underrated factor in all of this is finances and socioeconomic status, right? That is going to be the biggest driver, because the more well-off you are, the more you can afford all these wearables and Oura rings and supplements, right? It's just associated with your bank balance. And if you're richer, you're going to be healthier because you can avoid private care. You can go to gyms. You can eat fresh fruit and vegetables and buy it from the farmer's market. So those are all those things that we need to bear in mind.
If your wearable device tells you 12% recovered, you could just have more sleep the next day.
Well, exactly. If you work for yourself, you've got all of these advantages in life because of your postcode and because of the money that you might have. So it ultimately becomes a question, how can we raise the bar of health in general? And again, I can't give you a specific answer, but it is more about consumer technology. It's going to be expensive now. Diagnostics, wearables, hopefully they will go down in price over time as it becomes even more mainstream, because it's going to be the guys who can afford it are going to buy a wearable for several £100 or several $100 until the point it becomes more democratized and it's now sub £100, sub $100, where more people can afford it and it's useful for more people. So it's about accelerating the timeline for that to happen, but also, like people on social media who can provide information accurately, who can just give that health. Because some of the information that I've learned from social media, some longevity doctors might be charging several hundreds or thousands of pounds or dollars for. You can actually get from social media. So that's like a democratization tool.
Absolutely.
it's a tricky state we live in.
Yeah. Well, on exactly that topic, in your experience, there's a dizzying array of different options healthcare consumers can go down where they get quickly overwhelmed. Is it my sleep tracking? Is it my REM sleep? Is it red light therapy? Is it peptides? All this stuff. If we strip all that stuff back, and as you pointed out, this is limited to those that can afford it, the core things that people are getting wrong in their day-to-day lives that perhaps they should pay greater attention to, whether it's diet and ultra-processed foods, whether it's the quality of their mattress, what are Dr. Karan's top things that people should be looking at?
Health online and health in general can be very overwhelming and complex, actually. You know, it's simple, but it also can be quite challenging to navigate. So if I had to just start from scratch and start everything again, there are these boring basics that we've known about for decades.
Absolutely.
Get your vaccines, sleep, fibre, nutrition, movement, sunlight, exercise, spend time with other people.
With loved ones.
Stress, go to screenings, stop smoking, stop drinking alcohol, maintain a healthy body weight. Those things I've mentioned have not changed for decades, right? And it's boring. And everything else you do is going to be like marginal gains for the most part, right?
Absolutely.
If you do all of those things, those are the biggest buckets. And then if you've got the money, if you've got the resources, you've got the time, then you can worry about the nitty gritty. Like, okay, saunas may provide some increase here, or if I do this specific thing, it may provide this, or this supplement may give you an extra 0.5%. You know, so that's my take.
Well, you're speaking our language, because at Emerald, our whole thesis is that preventive medicine is really easy. Behavioral change is the bit that's really hard to get right. We have 4 pillars, the way we see it: exercise, sleep, nutrition, and lifestyle. Avoid things that kill you. And if you get those fundamentals right, that's the preventive medicine is easy bit. Then the rest of your life and longevity gets a lot easier. Of course, that's easy for motivated individuals that want to live healthy lives, and health literate individuals as well. The second part of that statement is behavioral change is really hard, and it's our view that devices like wearables allow that additional touch point to sort of get into nudge theory and change the way people are living their day-to-day lives when they perhaps don't realize that they're straying from the fundamentals. How do you see wearables evolving in mainstream healthcare? You spoke about the technology becoming cheaper. What's the future vision for how wearables is going to shape healthcare?
Yeah, so I think, inherently wearables are a means to an end, right? So I have regularly broken up with my Oura Ring. When my sleep is fully dialed in. I don't need it. I don't even check the app, because I just know I slept well. I wake up feeling good. So I actually don't care what the app tells me. Because many of these wearables, and I've tested so many of them, even if different sleep rings as well from different companies, sometimes you sleep well, it tells you it was a low score. Sometimes you have a really low score, and it tells you that you've actually, there's like discrepancies between how you feel and your score, oftentimes. So, and that's not common, but it's a good baseline to get you up to like a good sleep state or recovery state or whatever. I've just obviously come back from a lot of travel. I'm wearing the Oura Ring again just to figure out where I can tweak it, just to get myself back to my baseline. All of these tools are exactly the same thing, because you shouldn't need them for the rest of your life. You should be in this kind of like automation zone. Yeah,
that's where the dependence starts becoming a bit toxic if you start to need it and over-index on these scores.
Because these rings are, and not just these rings, these wearables are built on proxies of health. They're sensing your body temperature, maybe your breathing rate, all these different proxies of your brain pattern, of your recovery. It's not actually directly measuring certain things. It's all these sort of proprietary equations that you don't know. It goes into something, and it's just giving you, like, spitting out some formula which may or may not be 100% accurate. The only way to truly be even closer to a correlate of your sleep would be using an EEG or like a dedicated device in a sleep lab. No one can do that on an average basis. It's too cumbersome, so we can't do that. The best way to tell about your heart would be doing like a scan or doing like a dynamic ultrasound, a Doppler of your like heart flow. You're not going to do that on a daily basis. So like all of these things like HRV, again, they're just kind of formulas, and you don't know what's gone into them, what's the inputs and then the outputs of that. So And you can actually see all of these companies, from Aura to Whoop, and all of these wearables and diagnostic companies are heading towards one place, which is combining the diagnostics, the blood tests, the scans, with the wearables, with the supplements, with dietitians, nutritionists, concierge doctors, and this entire healthcare operating system. It's all been condensed in that one thing. And it's only a matter of time before Apple, with all their data, goes into that space as well. Amazon already getting into it. And those are going to be the heavyweights. Those are the incumbents who've got the biggest bank of data. Not Aura, not Whoop, or any of these novel companies. But data is the key. Like, how can data be used to transform health? And everyone is, there's not going to be one winner here. There's going to be multiple winners. But it's how can you consolidate all these different aspects of health into one place, so someone can just basically check in and find everything they need to know about their health and health records.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's just like we said at the start, it's not taking one random metric, say HRV, and elevating it and saying, this is the metric, everything else will fall into place. It's the unification of what I would call the wearables and wellness industry with mainstream medicine, and putting those two things together, because with all due respect to the hardware companies, your resting heart rate's a little bit elevated. It could be that you're stressed. Sure, it could be a million other things. And if it's a chronic problem, we won't know until you've had your annual physical and you're in front of the doctor with all that information in one place. And that's the vision we have for how this hardware is going to help. It's a tool. It's not the end goal. It's just more data.
It's, Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure, right? If you just measure one thing and have that as your North Star. So a classic example of that, of Goodhart's law in action, is measuring your glucose with continuous glucose monitors. If you're obsessed over just what that tells you, it's not useful, because that is one output. And there are so many factors which go into determining that output, right? Because why is the glucose up? Is it stress? Is it what you ate? Is it your kind of current stress states right now? Did you sleep badly? It doesn't tell you, just the glucose alone doesn't tell you anything. It's just one metric in this milieu of variables in your life. So in addition to other things, it's useful. Same with BMI, just on its own, it's useless. But when you know BMI, and your muscle mass, and your activity, and your age, and your gender, and your blood test, it becomes more useful on a population level. So, I think things in isolation are rarely useful. And then, again, back to this health operating system, when you got all the data in one place, then it becomes really valuable.
Exactly right. And what you've touched on there is the consumer healthcare companies, Emerald included, have a tremendous responsibility with how they package that data and put it in front of you. If the healthcare company acts like this one metric, be it HRV or your glucose on any given minute of the day, is the be-all and end-all, of course it's no surprise when the layperson starts to fixate on that issue. And so we've got to be very careful and deliberate with everything from the color schemes through to the frequency of push notifications, through to the sequence of information that you get given, which makes the current job we do at Emerald, I think, one of the most fascinating jobs I've done in my life, because not only are we working at this frontier where we're pulling all the healthcare data together, but we also have to think about the psychology, the human psychology of it, and how people are going to take that on board.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it, to be honest, because ultimately, how are you going to change someone's behavior? It is psychology, and people have struggled with this. Even one-to-one, if you see a patient every single day or every week for months and years, it is very hard to change their psychology. Personal trainers, teachers, doctors, they have a hard time changing people's minds about certain things. It's like the hardest thing you can do, because people are very fixated on ideas. Their self-beliefs, they're fixated. And when you introduce a new idea, there's cognitive dissonance between what the brain adheres to and this new idea, which is a threat. And that is the hardest thing to change in human psychology. So, all of these companies who are successful, highly successful, whether it's a supplement company or a wearable company like Aura or Whoop or Apple, they have mastered design and psychology and manipulation. That the branding team is the one that's driving the fortunes, not the data or tech team. It is the branding
Marketing
team,
psychology.
right?
It's not an afterthought. It's really much the forefront of what they do.
The best companies are the best marketing teams.
Just want to touch on a personal note. I know during your surgical training, you discovered that you had high cholesterol, fatty liver. How did you turn that around? And was that pre or post wearables? What kind of technology did you have available?
Yeah, that was probably before I was interested in preventative health in the way I'm now. And yeah, this was a very early stage of me actually doing one of these diagnostic tests. A friend of mine was probably like an early biohacker, super into gym. He was a rower, loved all that stuff. And he was going to do one of these random blood tests, like a just general wellness screen. And he said, "Do you want to come with me? I've got like this kind of, buy one, get one free thing." And I was like, yeah, okay. I hadn't actually done a blood test at that point ever. So I was like, it'll be interesting to know. And I thought it would all be normal. Did the blood test. It was like low vitamin D, high LDL cholesterol. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Go to the gym. I'm eating all this protein and high cholesterol. And I sought out a dietitian who said, listen, you're eating a lot of like meat, like bacon, sausage, chicken, beef, all this kind of stuff. Above 200 grams of all that like a day, which is high in saturated fats, very low fiber intake, around 10 grams. And she was like, you need to be 30 or more. And that combined with the mild fatty liver disease, she was like, you're at a stage where all of this is reversible just with lifestyle changes. But eventually you might need to be on a medication if you don't take action in the next few months or next year. And so doctors are the worst patients. I was like, okay, I'm worried now. I need to sort stuff out ASAP. So changed my diet with plans from the dietitian. Also, she suggested I take a fiber supplement to really give me a bigger baseline as well. So doing all of that, reverse the cholesterol, then reverse the fatty liver in a couple of years after that. And I still get a yearly blood test, sometimes even biannually, and a liver scan as well, just because I'm so worried about that. Every year, just to make sure everything is on point and I'm still in that steady state. And yeah, that was an eye-opener for me to... We shouldn't think all of these chronic diseases are diseases of old age. They're all seeded in early life in the second and third decades.
And they don't come out of nowhere, as you say. And
no,
so by the time
lifestyle is cool,
exactly right.
That's a trend that we've seen at Emerald, where it's not your 50s and 60s where things go wrong. It's your 20s actually and 30s where things start to go away from normal. And so prevention isn't just for the older person. It's something that should start at a younger age. And with the wearables that we have available, the data you can get in your sleep when you exercise, the biomarkers that we do, it's the kind of thing that can really transform your life and set good habits early on so that people don't run into disease later on. And something I wanted to touch on is you talked about fibre as one of the key things to get your cholesterol down. You have founded a company called LOAM. Congratulations.
Yeah.
What was the philosophy behind that? And can you talk to us about the importance of fibre, what probiotics are, prebiotics, probiotic longevity probiotics? There's so many different phrases coming about. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so LOAM Science is obviously, it's a microbiome company that I started, and it's something that I realized I didn't really learn much about when I was in medical school, about the microbiome. I don't even think that word was on my radar or in my vocabulary until I became a doctor and I sort of began to hear it more and see it more in some of the medical literature. And it was only after I had this problem in 2018 that I really dove into the science of fiber, prebiotics, and microbiome. And that still was a pretty early stage. It's only in the last 1 to 2 years it's taken center stage, or beginning to take center stage. I went from a fringe hippie science to mainstream right now. And for me, LOAM Science is the culmination of all my research and aims to build something that I didn't have. So it kind of started selfishly when I was trying fiber supplements for myself to figure out what I can take in addition to my diet.
Yeah.
I cycled through so many different fiber supplements, and they were always let down by either not being palatable, not being high quality in terms of the dosing or the clinically validated ingredients or fillers and additives, and I couldn't just stick with any single fiber supplement. And I also realized that the evolving science of the microbiome, none of these fiber supplements were actually built for the microbiome. They were just built for bulking and aiding good stool, or being very viscous fibers like psyllium husk. And they didn't actually have much of a microbiome effect. So learning all these things about fermentation of fiber, short-chain fatty acids, the effect on the colonocytes, the cells lining the colon, I was basically doing a DIY kitchen experiment to create my own fiber blend or fiber cocktail, but it just wasn't sustainable because I found this kind of formulation, but it just wasn't sustainable for me to be weighing out fibers in a scale and I'm kitchen every single day and taking it. So I thought, hang on, let me do this for me, but also for my dad and my family. And then I tested it out in a few friends and other family members, and they all loved it. And I thought, is there something here where actually I've built a solution which can be scalable? And that was the big jump for me, to build the next generation of microbiome products and fiber supplements which are accessible to a wide range of people, but also build it with science as like the backbone. Raise not the level of the wellness industry, but the floor of it, because it's so low at the moment.
Absolutely.
And that was the overarching aim. Can I build something which is like the greatest fiber supplement in the world?
Well, maybe we could use the opportunity to give a quick 30 seconds of education to the audience. What is fiber? Why is it important to have in the diet? How does it tie into the other bits you've listed, including cholesterol?
Yeah, so I think people always inherently think about fiber as something that's associated with constipation, but it's about far more than that. Because of the microbiome, this colony of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and archaea that live inside us, their primary fuel source of the bacteria is fiber. They are saccharolytic species, which means they ferment and need fiber to survive and then spit out beneficial compounds. And if they don't have a fiber source, they turn into putrefactive or proteolytic species. They start digesting protein. And the protein inside us is the cells, the cell lining, the gut lining. And that can lead to this kind of leaky gut symptoms and intestinal hyperpermeability and all these sort of things which we don't want, digestive diseases and worse. So fiber is the rent that your body needs to survive, the microbiome needs. And you think about it as a fuel source for bacteria. Bacteria ferment fiber and break it down and produce short-chain fatty acids, which are antioxidants and nourish the entire body, reducing inflammation, supporting metabolic health, immune health. The microbiome thrives with more fiber, trains your immune system in early health and throughout your life. And so basically I would go so far as to say that there is not much that fiber doesn't do directly or indirectly in every aspect of human health, from hormone metabolism and regulation via enterohepatic circulation, gut-brain health, liver health via the gut-liver axis, improving skin health and chronic inflammatory skin diseases via the gut-skin axis, helping with the bowels, all those sort of things. And you mentioned the cholesterol. That is one part of it, and that's part of this kind of enterohepatic circulation. Our liver obviously synthesizes, produces cholesterol, and that is used to create bile acids. The bile goes into the intestines. Fiber can bind to bile acids, physically bind to it, soluble fibers, and help to excrete it. And the more bile acids and cholesterol you excrete, the body has to pump out and pull out more cholesterol from the bloodstream to get rid of it. So fiber can directly help to lower cholesterol via that route, but also via the microbiome route through the short-chain fatty acids and how that influences lipid metabolism. So I can geek out on fiber for hours, days, but that's kind of like a high level.
That was really useful. You also, with all of this, it's linked to the gut microbiome. People hear gut microbiome, they're most associated with a yogurt with sort of probiotic properties. What's the real science there, and what's some of the fad stuff that people will see pushed on their Instagram feeds?
I have flipped and flopped on probiotics many times, and where I stand right now, so initially I thought they were completely useless. That was my initial take. Probably about 2017, 2018. I thought probiotics are essentially like a glorified scam. I was wrong. They're not. They can be useful in specific cases. If you have a specific studied strain for a specific condition, like traveler's diarrhea, Saccharomyces boulardii, that's well studied for traveler's diarrhea, and that can help your gut in that specific instance. And there are certain indications and specific criteria that certain probiotics can help. And also you need to look at the genus, species, and strain. It has to have 3 parts to the name, and then you need to look it up on PubMed. Has it been studied for that condition? We're not in a stage where you have general wellness probiotics that can raise your baseline health. All of us are in relatively good health. Would we benefit from taking a probiotic just to boost our gut? No, that doesn't exist right now in this era of science we're in. I believe it can get there with next generation probiotics that can improve the baseline. And, probably like a colony of different probiotics that you take and can settle, that is the future. We haven't unlocked it yet, no matter what anyone tells you. Is it harmful to take one of those general wellness probiotics to see if it has an effect? It's not. You know, the risk-benefit ratio is not really in the realms of harm. If you've got the money, again, comes back to socioeconomic status. If you've got the money and you want to experiment, like an N=1 experiment, go for it. And if you find it's actually helping you, who am I to argue and debunk that? Because ultimately, it's N=1. I believe in that. If it's helping you or making you feel good, keep doing it if you can afford it. So that is where I'm at right now. I do not include probiotics in my stack, but if someone is and they're feeling benefits, cool.
That's super useful. Could you run us through your stack? You've touched on your wearables, but maybe top to bottom. What helps you?
Wearables that I use right now is limited to Apple Watch and Oura Ring. I wear my Apple Watch daily steps, but also it's helpful to compare it to my Oura Ring to see like what the discrepancy is, and also just as like a watch. You know, it's a easy thing. I'm never going to own a Rolex or anything like that. Apple Watch, good for me. Oura Ring, intermittent usage. Once I dial in my sleep and it's good sleep and I'm feeling good for a month, I will get rid of it because I don't find it useful to train with when I go to the gym. Supplements wise, pretty limited. Vitamin D, I've had low vitamin D in the past, and so it's like a regular thing daily. I take an algal omega-3. I don't take any fish oils. I used to take fish oils, but ultimately, where do fish get their omega-3 from? It comes from algae, the most abundant source of omega-3 in the world. So might as well go to the source rather than the middleman. So I take a vegan omega-3. I also take, obviously, a fibre. Obviously, I'm biased. I take my own fibre every single day. I give it to my wife. Because it's easy, it's invisible, dissolves with high solubility. Add it to my coffee, I bake with it, so I have 1 to 2 sachets a day depending on if I'm traveling, if I need more or not. And that is it. And actually, sorry, I am recently experimenting with a multivitamin because I do feel, I flipped and flopped on that as well. I do feel, given how busy I am, sometimes my meals aren't always regular if I'm away from home especially. The multivitamin, I see it as like a crutch to help fill in the gaps. So those are my stacks, and a xylitol chewing gum for the oral microbiome. Had it on the way here. Freshens your breath, but also the xylitol helps to kill any pathogenic species in the gum lining, like these sort of gingivalis species, which can be detrimental, Streptococcus mutans.
Can I get your thoughts on some current consumer health trends?
Yeah.
GLP-1s.
Game changer. The nuance is that obviously it's not right for everyone, and you need to still build the basics: high fiber, high protein, exercise, resistance training, sleep well. All the lifestyle buckets need to be dialed in, but for a lot of people, they can be game-changing. Obesity is a chronic condition and needs chronic long-term solutions. So I think it can be a game-changer.
Red light therapy.
Red light therapy, it depends on the type, the source, the exposure, the intensity. For the vast majority of people, just get enough sunlight during the day. That will get you the bulk of the benefits.
Link between vaccination and autism. Despite all the debunking, there's still a lot of concern.
So many confounding variables. So the studies which show that there's a link, they've not accounted appropriately for the confounding factors. We have an abundance of trials and epidemiological data suggesting no link between the two, and I think it's been thoroughly debunked.
Regular vitamin D supplements for us living here in the UK.
I think it would be highly beneficial for most people. Again, tailored to a person's age, weight, gender, sex, ethnicity, all those sort of things. But I think for the average person, the risk-benefit ratio leans on the side of benefit. For me personally, it's a daily foundational thing.
Last one from me.
I've got a few more.
Sauna therapy.
The data seems to suggest that it is beneficial. Again, I don't think it's going to replace any other things. So the data seems to suggest that it can provide equivalent benefits, limited data suggesting equivalent benefits to a cardio session. If your cardio is just sauna and you're not actually doing the exercise, long term, I don't think that is a strategy. But if you're doing all the other things and you're adding in sauna as like recovery, a social tool to hang out with other people, I think it can be great. But if you have 30 minutes to do one thing, sauna or exercise, do the exercise.
Daily creatine for men and also for women.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I do take daily creatine as well. It's almost like a habit now. I add as much as I can to my morning coffee. So the fibre and creatine goes in the morning coffee. Yes to both. I think, 5 grams minimum is like a great starting point. There is emerging research suggesting higher doses can be effective for maybe cognitive effects. I think, a bit of caution there. Let's just see more research suggesting that. There's signals, but I wouldn't say overwhelming evidence just yet for that. But if you're training, taking creatine can be very effective. If you're not training and just taking it, could you see some benefit? Yeah, potentially. But we should be grounded on what creatine can and can't do.
The risks of melatonin for sleep.
I use melatonin when I travel and when I want to offset the effects of jet lag. But as a chronic daily use tool, you shouldn't be doing it.
Magnesium supplementation for sleep.
Again, I have tried this on occasion where I've struggled with poor sleep. I have a bottle of magnesium pills at home. It really depends on the form, the bioavailability, the reason you're taking it, for GI effects or for sleep effects or for anxiety effects. It really depends. And I think you can get much better ROI from other things in sleep hygiene in general than magnesium. Having said that, again, coming back to the risk benefit, it's not a dangerous thing to take.
Just moving away now to health policy. 5% of the NHS budget goes towards prevention. If you could influence anything in health policy that would improve preventive care on a population scale, what kind of direction would you take that in?
I wonder if there was a portion of budget, like almost like a tuck shop budget, which was allocated from that pool, or even increase that, and every person got like a supplement allowance. How much benefit would the average person get? Depending on the person. Like, for example, if someone were to be prescribed by their GP for free, if they met some threshold, a fibre supplement, and they were taking it every single day, and that fibre supplement helped them avoid hemorrhoids or constipation or long-term diverticular disease or lowered their risk of colorectal cancer, how much would that saving be if we extrapolated that down? If another person was prescribed multivitamins, for example, or omega-3s because they didn't eat fatty fish or salmon, they couldn't afford salmon, what ultimate consequence, beneficial consequence, would that have downstream? So I would be interested to see if there could be some sort of like budget that could be allocated where a GP, family doctor, or someone could prescribe a certain thing, whether it was like, I'm going to prescribe you a gym membership, I'm going to prescribe you this supplement.
Yeah.
What huge benefit could that have for vast swathes of the population? I think that would be fascinating.
It also gives people more ownership over their own health. Here's your budget for your health.
Correct.
And that's sometimes the problem I have with critiques of an annual health check. People say, well, at the national scale, we're not picking up enough to save lives on this level. I think completely disregards the benefit of taking ownership over your own health, understanding that for a given individual, their HbA1c is elevated, and now the ball's in their court, and there's things they can do about it. To go a bit further on that, I think within consumer health, what the industry used to get so wrong was to hand over healthcare information with no follow-up. Here's your red, amber, green healthcare checkup. Best of luck to you. You've got 3 in the red zone. And people equate a marginally out of range zinc to a significantly out of range HbA1c, and they don't present to their GP, and they just walk away and they start taking a zinc supplement, and they leave the HbA1c where it is.
Yeah, I think that idea of ownership is really interesting because you see in companies when they get employee benefits, you're given an allocated budget, whatever that is, £50, £100 a month for either a gym membership, or will fund you to buy an Apple Watch or whatever it is. That seems almost more sticky because it's like, oh my God, okay, I need to use this budget for something. So if you had the employee benefits that's in the private world to health benefit budget for the average person, I think that could be like a game changer. And I would see the utility of that kind of really taken up. And yeah, I mean, you can't speak to the change this would have because I don't think we'd ever see that happen. But if it did, that could be huge. And you could even run like an open labeled population study to see if that actually has a change, you know?
Yeah, fantastic.
Something interesting that everyone's doing at the moment is applying the same model to surgical patients. So those undergoing surgery, prehabilitation is something that's very well evidenced, particularly for the high-risk patients. No one's really looked into the marginal gains for low-risk patients because we know VO2 max is correlated with outcomes, and also the post-operative recovery support. And so far, what we've seen is that patients really value the hand-holding aspect of the whole process outside of the clinical outcomes. And it really touches on something you said, which is the resistance that some people have towards behavioural change. When someone tells you that you have a cancer, you have an aneurysm, and you need surgery, it almost makes you look at your own vulnerability as a human. And that resistance goes away almost instantly. And all of a sudden, you're receptive to all that health information.
I think prehabilitation is the most slept on intervention that we could have in surgery, right? It could actually sometimes avoid the need for surgery in some cases, or at least, delay it for another rainy day. I've worked in centers where they've had large prehab centers and cardiopulmonary exercise testing. The amount you can do in 8 to 10 weeks while someone is waiting for surgery, not just stopping smoking or stopping alcohol or just walking more, but actually dedicated interventions. And I'm coming at it from a microbiome lens. For not just GI surgery, but for all other surgeries, what if there was a dedicated gut health microbiome intervention? Like we were speaking off air before about fibre as like a post-operative tool, but what about a pre-operative tool? What if someone was improving their nutrition, but specifically their fibre content, pre-surgery to the point where actually they didn't have the symptoms anymore, they didn't need the surgery now, so it could be delayed even more, so they can optimize themselves even more, reduce their risk of post-op complications, or just a bunch of other things. And you pair that with blood tests, with microbiome tests to see, the longitudinal change. I think there could be so much done there, because cardiopulmonary exercise testing their anaerobic threshold and their lactate levels, that's all fine. But that's not quantifiable things that a patient can understand.
Yeah.
But if they could see, hey, this intervention has helped me lose weight, lower my cholesterol, my bloating's gone, my gut health, has actually changed, I can see that change, it could be huge psychologically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the kind of granular data points that we provide the patient. It's not just about all the information that we're getting as doctors and that we're interpreting. We're showing them how that actually is changing their life and their physiology in real time. And we've got 6.5 million patients on the NHS waiting list, waiting for surgery. Most of them wait for more than 50 weeks. To me, it's a no-brainer that almost all patients should have prehabilitation. Stella Vick, the National Director for Secondary Care, was talking about some of her gallbladder patients being removed from the waiting list because of their own accord. They lost weight. They were no longer symptomatic. And they said, do I still need a lap chole? No, you don't. You don't.
Yeah.
So that's another patient off the waiting list. So preventative care isn't just about treating people and helping people stay healthy. It's also reversing disease and also then having that event, that surgical operation that's been put in front of them, act as a catalyst for long-term change and generating a healthier nation as a result of that kind of stimulus.
Yeah, it's dual action, right? Yeah. You can improve their health, so maybe they don't need the intervention, or you improve their health, so the risk of complications and recovery is much better in terms of that risk profile post-intervention as well. So, yeah, I mean, the preventative care can be done with this kind of like interventional health as well. And yeah, I think that prehab is a fascinating idea to explore, and we're definitely not doing enough that right now.
We've covered a lot of ground, but as we both touched upon during the conversation, a lot of these interventions, a lot of this measurement, it takes time, it takes money, and we highlighted the importance of the basics, the things everyone knows, but let's spell it out. So could you take us through the fundamentals people need to know about what level of exercise they should be doing, what do they need to be eating, how much do they need to be sleeping, to live a long and healthy life without worrying about all the extras?
Yeah, again, the sort of caveat here, the nuance here, is that it's somewhat personal for every single person.
Of course.
So, breaking down health from the beginning, if I were to build mine, again, I'd focus on a few basics. And I think it's easier to provide someone with maybe just 3 things to focus on. One would be sleep, one would be fiber, one would be exercise. And when it comes to sleep, keep as much as you can your sleep and wake times consistent, because that will get you into a habit to the point where you don't need an alarm. You don't care even if you wake up at the same time on a weekend as a weekday. It needs to be consistent. So really having sleep as one of the foundations of your life. Second is nutrition is such a big bucket. The biggest difference you can have in your nutrition in the current state of the world is fiber, because we are chronically, collectively under-fibered, right? So 30 grams a day as a baseline, but shooting above that would be better. Because we look at some of the populations around the world where they actually have a higher fiber consumption than the rest of us, and they do better in terms of a chronic disease profile. So get fiber in, understand what fiber-rich snacks and foods look like. In terms of 2 tablespoons of chia seeds is 10 grams of fiber. It's like a third of your recommendation. If you have a pear, that's 6 grams of fiber. Most people don't understand what high fiber foods look like. So that's the first thing. So sleep, fiber, and diversity of fibers, not just one type. And the last thing is the exercise. People get caught up with 30 minutes a day, whatever.
Hit class, no hit class.
Yeah, forget all of that. If you had to pick one thing, walk. It's accessible to every single person. Again, a lot of these, sort of longevity zones or whatever, they're walking a lot. Because walking, that sort of calf pump that you've got is allowing vascular remodeling. Your blood flow in your heart is actually being remodeled because of that low shear stress. In my opinion, if you were doing like an hour of running a day and then spent the rest of the day sedentary, that is a lot worse than if you were just walking a lot throughout the day. So consistent, low volume, low shear stress exposure to walking is one of the biggest things you could do in terms of vascular remodeling and heart health, lipid metabolism and regulation, glucose control, and even gut health as well. There are direct links between gut health and exercise. So sleep well and consistently, eat a shit ton of fiber, and walk. And those three things will give you the biggest, return on your kind of investment into health.
Just the last closing question for me, Karan. Many thanks for coming on the podcast. What's next for Dr. Karan Rajan?
What is next is fatherhood. It's going to be a huge journey. I'm going to be continuing to educate online, and with LOAM and the fibre product we've got, I really want to continue to build out the science of that. So we're in the midst of multiple studies to continue to take it to the next level and clinically validate the formula we've got, in addition to relying on the clinically backed ingredients that we use. So pioneering that sort of science and microbiome health and looking at it in underserved populations as well. I just want to get stuck into science in every aspect I can.
Karan, it's been a fantastic discussion. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Appreciate you guys.